Order! Order. I remind members that the private members' bill ballot book is open today in the No lobby until 6 p.m, at which point it will be taken to the Public Bill Office and remain open for signatures until rise of the House. The ballot draw will be held at 9 a.m. tomorrow in Committee Room 8. We now come to questions to the Secretary of State for Scotland, Martin Rhodes.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is, of course, my first Scottish questions from this side of the House, and I'm delighted to be joined by so many colleagues behind me from Scotland. I would like to welcome back returning members from all parties and thank those who are not returned for all their hard work on behalf of their constituents. I would also like to thank the former Secretary of State for Scotland, Sir Alistair Jack, and his work in representing Scotland in Whitehall and the UK Government in Scotland, and also thank you to all the staff in the Scotland Office for making us so welcome. Their professionalism is unsurpassed. I was very pleased that we were recently able to welcome 19 female Afghan medical students to Scotland to continue their studies. The work to bring them here was initiated by Sir Alistair Jack, and their safe arrival in the UK is a credit to commitment to helping them. I congratulate the member for Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk on his new position. I'm sure he'll be diligent in holding me to account. I hope I was diligent in holding him to account. And Mr. Speaker, finally, I'm sure the whole House will join me in congratulating Scotland's Olympians and Paralympians who have achieved so much sporting success this summer.
And I think the Secretary of State would like to group the questions.
Thank you very much for keeping me right, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will answer questions 1, 2 and 15 together. This Government will introduce a new industrial strategy to drive long-term sustainable growth by securing investment in crucial sectors and industries in all parts of Scotland and the UK. This involves working in close partnership with the Scottish Government. This will support our national mission to have the highest sustained growth in the G7.
Martin Rhodes.
An industrial strategy that embraces the jobs of the future must involve our higher education institutions, including the 3 world-class universities in Glasgow. What is the Government doing to ensure that this is the case?
Can I thank my honourable friend and congratulations on his wonderful victory in Glasgow North. Scotland's 19 world-class higher education institutions are an essential part of our economy, culture and global reputation and will be paramount to the successful delivery of our missions. We punch well above our weight in Scotland, and that's something we need to protect and nurture. By the end of next week, I will have met the principals of all of Scotland's universities. I want to deepen and strengthen those relationships, and I believe that the knowledge and expertise of these institutions will be crucial to delivering a new industrial strategy and the goals of this new Government.
McNally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Coatbridge and Bellshill has a rich history of heavy industry, but following years of empty rhetoric and endless soundbites from the previous UK Government and the current Scottish Government, there's been a failure to honour the legacy of industry across Scotland and deliver a long-term, sustainable and coherent strategy. Can I ask what steps the Secretary of State will take to ensure that industrial jobs in Scotland are as much a part of its future as they are its history?
Can I thank my honourable friend and congratulations to him on winning Coatbridge and Bellshill. Scotland and its world-class industrial workforce will play a driving role in our ambition to become a green energy powerhouse in this country. For example, my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, the Scottish Government and I met with Petro Ineos earlier this week to discuss what support can be provided to ensure a sustainable future for the industrial clusters in Wider, Falkirk and Grangemouth region, which is crucial to the entirety of Scotland and the UK. This includes our commitment to fund Project Willow with the Scottish Government.
Gregor Poynton.
I'd like to thank my right honourable friend for his response. A UK-wide industrial strategy that supports jobs in Scotland is incredibly vital. Now, however, this week we've heard the concerning news from Mitsubishi Electric, a plant in my constituency that is looking to reduce its workforce from its current complement of 1,600 by 440 jobs. Now, these are highly skilled workforce, creating world-leading products, air source heat pumps and air conditioning units, which will be absolutely vital as we look to decarbonise our economy in the future. However, no fault of their own, due to short-term economic pressures, they've seen their order book fall away. Can I ask the Secretary of State to meet with the management, workers and me to firstly to see whatever the UK Government can do to support its...
The Secretary of State's got the question at the beginning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my honourable friend for the question. I'm really sorry to hear of the difficulties faced by Mitsubishi Electric's workforce and the uncertainty faced by those workers during this difficult time. I pay tribute to my honourable friend's efforts in supporting the workers in this constituency, and we've talked about this already. I will, of course, commit as a matter of priority to a meeting with the company and workforce in the coming weeks.
Carmichael.
Mr Speaker, and can I too welcome the Secretary of State to his new position and congratulate him to his appointment to what I can tell him is a splendid job to hold in government. In terms of an industrial strategy, however, when he is speaking to his ministerial colleagues, will he focus their minds on the potential that comes from the development of tidal stream generation? That is something where there is an enormous opportunity for our manufacturing sector to come from creating a supply chain which is based here in the United Kingdom, rather than having to bring capacity back from overseas.
I agree with the right honourable gentleman, and congratulations on his role when he was in the Scotland office as well. He did much work, and we hope to emulate much of that work. I've met with EMEC in his own constituency, and indeed met with the tidal resources up there. It's critically important for our net zero ambitions and to get to clean power by 2030. I'm due to meet them when I visit his constituency in the coming weeks, and I will make sure it's top of the agenda.
Christine Jardine, the Lib Democratic spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I'd also like to welcome the Secretary of State to his place and congratulate him, and also, if I could associate myself with his earlier remarks, particularly about Scotland's Olympians and Paralympians. I was also delighted to hear the recognition in his first answer about the role that our universities will play in a new industrial strategy, which is going to be vital in Scotland, particularly in the light of the admissions made recently about the Scottish National Party, about the mess that they have made of our economy in Scotland. Which is why I was baffled to see the UK Government cutting £800 million from a supercomputer project at the University of Edinburgh, with potential to support research in drug discovery, climate change and advanced engineering. So what discussions did he have with the Chancellor of the Exchequer about the impact?
Well, as the Honourable Lady will know, the Chancellor of the Exchequer did a full audit of government spending in the first weekend that she was in office and found a £22 billion black hole. The exascale computer that she talks about was announced by two previous Prime Ministers, two previous Chancellors, and indeed was in the budget back in the early part of this year, but no money was allocated, and therefore the project has been paused pending both the budget on the 30th of October and the spending review next year.
Elaine Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I am proud to be part of a UK Government which will oversee the biggest upgrade of workers' rights in a generation. We have set out the New Deal for working people and will write this into law within our first 100 days. Over 75 reforms will deliver on a core part of our growth mission to raise living standards, and there are up to 7,800 workers across Ayrshire that stand to benefit from Labour's plans to make work pay.
In addition to this Government's action on the New Deal for working people, we should ensure that a fair deal for those who powered our country in the past. In my previous work with the Coalfield Regeneration Trust, I know the vital difference that extra support makes to these communities and their families. Can the Secretary of State give an update on the proposals to end the injustice of the mine workers' pension scheme before it is too late?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mine workers from my own constituency of Midlothian, my honourable friend's constituency, and from across our coalfields powered this country. So I am delighted that our Labour manifesto committed to ending the injustice of the mine workers' pension scheme by conducting a review of both the unfair surplus arrangements and on transferring the Investment Reserve Fund back to members. I'd be delighted to write to my honourable friend and other members representing coalfield seats with a further update in due course.
Dave Duggan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State to his position. He'll know that the Scottish Government has its own tax-raising powers. He'll remember criticising the Scottish Government for not using them, then criticising the Scottish Government when we did use them. But nevertheless, it generates £1.5 billion extra revenue in Scotland by taxing those who earn more, slightly more, allows us to tax those who are earning slightly less, even less than they do in the rest of the United Kingdom. What advice would he give the Chancellor to mirror those efforts in Scotland to have a more progressive and fair tax system for our workers?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The member will be aware that the IFS has said this morning that the tax policies of the Scottish Government have actually cost Scotland money rather than raised it. And he will know too that this Government has had to undertake a comprehensive audit of spending to make sure that we can clear up the mess that we've inherited. The £22 billion black hole is real. The Treasury reserves have been spent more than 3 times over, and he'll be aware that our focus for the Chancellor is on making sure that we fix the foundations and get the economy back on track.
David Mundell.
Question number 4, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This Government is committed to delivering economic growth in all parts of the country, and we're working closely with local partners and the Scottish Government on the Borderlands Growth Deal, and together we are ensuring it delivers the uplift in economic benefits as set out in the deal.
I congratulate the Honourable Lady on her appointment, but particularly the Secretary of State on his appointment. Being on your own in this House is a really tough gig, and he exercised it in exemplary fashion over 7 years. But as I found, having new colleagues brings a whole new set of challenges on its own. Can I ask the Honourable Lady if she will ensure that the mountain bike centre at the Carley Mill in Innerleithen is prioritised? There has been a suggestion that the project will not now go ahead in that location. It's vital that we have that centre, and it's vital that that mill is refurbished.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So the UK Government has pledged £19 million for the Mounterbike Innovation Centre project as part of the Borderlands Growth Deal. My officials are working closely with all local partners, including the Scottish Borders Council, to progress the project, and I expect to update on the development of the project shortly.
John Brady.
Question 5, please, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you very much to my honourable friend for the question, and congratulations on winning Glasgow East. The people of Scotland want their two governments to spend more time fighting for them than fighting each other. That's why resetting the relationship has been a priority for this government and indeed the Prime Minister. I've had numerous productive meetings with Scottish ministers, including the Deputy First Minister. We've had 17 days of visits across Scotland. 7 Cabinet members have already visited, dozens of calls between Secretaries of State and Cabinet Secretaries, and I look forward to working with the Scottish Government to deliver our shared priorities for the people of Scotland.
John Brady.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Scotland's official economic forecaster, the Scottish Fiscal Commission, has said about the Scottish budget that much of the pressure comes from the Scottish Government's own decisions. Would the Secretary of State agree with me that the Scottish Government must accept responsibility for the catastrophic state of Scottish public finances?
Very grateful for that question from the honourable gentleman. He is right. The Scottish Fiscal Commission did say that much of the pressure comes from the Scottish Government's own decision-making, and while this new government is cleaning up the mess of the previous Conservative government, the SNP seem to be cleaning up their own mess at the moment. In 2023, Audit Scotland said that, and I quote, "The Scottish Government projections suggest it cannot afford to pay for the public services in their current form." And as we've already heard, the IFS said this morning that SNP decisions have reduced tax take rather than increased it. This is about treating taxpayers' money with respect and being honest about the tough choices that we face. An honest assessment of the SNP government's budget is that these problems have been stored up for years, tough decisions have been kicked into the long grass, and money has been spent recklessly. A problem of their own making that the Scottish people will suffer from as they try and clear it up.
Secretary of State John Lamont.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I also start by congratulating both the new ministers on their appointments to the Scotland Office. I certainly love my time at the Scotland Office, and I know they're going to be very well supported by the excellent team of officials in the department, some of whom are in the box today. Now, Mr Speaker, Labour plan to end the winter fuel payment, taking money away from elderly people who have worked all their days. Age Scotland have said, and I quote, "At minimum, 250,000 pensioners in Scotland on the lowest incomes or living in fuel poverty will no longer receive this vital financial support over the winter months, while hundreds of thousands more on modest incomes are going to struggle." Labour have cut it across the UK, and the SNP are doing their dirty work in Scotland. What does the Minister have to say to the 250,000 elderly Scots who are in poverty, struggling with Labour and the SNP's decisions?
Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And can I welcome the Shadow Secretary of State to his new post. The Chancellor set out during the inheritance statement a few weeks ago the dreadful legacy that his government, that he was a member of, left this current government to fix the foundations and try and clear up. These were decisions that the Chancellor didn't want to make or didn't expect to make, but indeed have had to be made in order to try and get the finances in balance and to try and make sure we can fix those foundations to deliver our manifesto. That is the legacy of this government, and as has already been mentioned in the previous answer to the start of this question, the SNP have already made a mess of the public finances over the last 17 years, and as we've seen yesterday in the Scottish Parliament, they've got one hell of a mess to clear up, and it's Scottish pensioners and Scottish people that will pay the price.
John Lamont.
Mr Speaker, that Labour are taking a leaf from the SNP's playbook and refusing to take responsibility for their own actions. This is happening because of choices made by this Labour government which have been passed on by the SNP in Edinburgh. Now, his party's election slogan was all about change. Under this Labour government, pensioners don't seem to have any change to spare. One woman called Leslie told Age Scotland, "This payment is literally a lifesaver for us." Another, Brian, told them, "I would freeze without it or go hungry." Is this the change that Labour meant, taking money away from struggling pensioners?
Mr Speaker, there seems to be no recognition or apology from the Shadow Secretary of State in terms of the legacy they've left this government to try and clear up. We knew about, of course, the massive overspending in public services from the previous government and, of course, the £22 billion black hole that was revealed by the Chancellor in the audit that she did in her first weekend in office. These things have to be fixed. They are tough decisions we didn't expect to make. They're certainly tough decisions we didn't want to make, but we've had to make them to fix the foundations of our economy.
Mr Speaker, can I add my congratulations to the Secretary of State? I know it's not always been easy and sometimes been a lonely path, so a personal congratulations, and to the member for Midlothian for taking her place. In terms of improving the relationship between the Scottish and the UK Government, I'm going to take the Secretary of State at face value, but you'll be aware of the devastating consequences of the cut to the winter fuel payments on pensioners in both our constituencies and across Scotland. So in terms of working better with the Scottish Government, will he do better than just give them 90 minutes notice next time?
Mr Speaker, I welcome the honourable gentleman back to his place, having re-won his new constituency of Arbroath and Broadferry at the election. I think the honourable gentleman should look at what the Finance Secretary in Scotland did in the Scottish Parliament yesterday. She announced £500 million of cuts, including £120 million in health services, £20 million in mental health services, and has sold the family inheritance by using the Scotland money to plug the additional funding gaps in their budget. The Audit Scotland has been clear, the IFS has been clear. This is a problem of their own making, so if they want to reset the relationship, they could start by taking responsibility for their own actions.
Stephen Gattins.
Question 6, please, Mr Speaker.
I'm just giving the Minister number 6. I'm committed to working with the Scottish Government, and I've already met with the Deputy First Minister 4 times in 8 weeks. Resetting the relationship between Scotland's two governments is crucial to driving economic growth. Just last week, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, was in Glasgow and met with the First Minister. The Prime Minister has made it a key part of his new way of working in government to reset that relationship and has met with the First Minister to have those discussions. And members of the business community discuss growing the Scottish economy. It's all of our choices to grow the Scottish economy, and something we all need to do together.
Stephen Gattins.
Mr Speaker, and I'll thank the Secretary of State for his response. He will be aware that macroeconomic policy sits here, that decisions taken sit here that have a huge impact. Now, we've worked on this issue in the past before. Does he agree with the SNP that being outside the customs union in the single market is bad for growth in the Scottish economy? Or does he agree with the Conservatives and their colleagues in Reform that it's been good for the Scottish economy?
Mr Speaker, the honourable gentleman is taking no responsibility for the decisions that his party makes in the Scottish Government. We've seen that yesterday in terms of the plugging the holes in their own public finances. The IFS have been clear that the decisions they have made has taken the tax take down in Scotland, despite it being the highest tax part of the country. And I think it's time, if we are to reset this relationship, that they start off by taking accountability and responsibility for their own decisions.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sport has played an essential role in economic growth in Scotland. What steps will he take to ensure the legacy of Sir Andy Murray is recognised in Scotland?
I'm grateful for the question, Mr Speaker. Can I tell the House and announce today that Andy Murray is no relation to myself, despite the fact we share the same physical physique? But I can assure you that the Scotland Office and this Government will do all we can to make sure that wonderful legacy of one of Britain's best sportspersons of all time is certainly maintained.
Torquil Crichton.
7, Mr Speaker.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer questions 7, 9 and 10 together. Scotland's at the forefront of this Government's mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower by 2030. We will headquarter Great British Energy, a new publicly owned clean energy company capitalise with £8.3 billion in Scotland. This will help create thousands of jobs, deliver energy security and lower prices permanently for consumers. Just this week, the sixth allocation for the Contracts for Difference scheme was announced, with over 130 renewable projects awarded contracts, with 20% of those projects based in Scotland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the Secretary of State to his position? We watched him for many lonely years as he held the fort on his own. He was always outnumbered, he was never outgunned. Can he use the full firepower of the Scotland office now to convince Cabinet colleagues and industry players of the vital role and potential of the Arnish fabrication yard in Stornoway and its sister yard in Methil, both of which are coming up for sale as part of going to market for Carl and Wolff? And can he assure workers at the Arnish yard and Stornoway port that they will play a big role in renewables, future and in GB energy?
Thank you very much for that question. Can I congratulate my honourable friend on winning the Western Isles? He is Mr Western Isles himself, and he'll be a champion for those particular islands. The Government will continue to engage with Harland and Wolff, local MPs and the Scottish Government to monitor the situation and support a resolution that provides long-term certainty for the yards and workforces across the whole of the UK, with all 4 yards across the UK being treated as one. Minister McNeil has also recently visited the Arnish yard herself. I visited the Methil yard twice, once before the election and during the election. In particular, I have regular meetings with the Deputy First Minister on this issue and hope to meet with her again in the coming weeks, but we will do all we can to protect these yards.
Gordon McKay. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Having spent many years working for the Right Honourable Gentleman when he was on the opposite side of the chamber, can I welcome him to his position as Secretary of State for Scotland. The creation of GB Energy will support 50,000 new jobs across Scotland. It will deliver lower household bills and help meet our net zero obligations. Given that Glasgow already has a fantastic renewables industry, can I ask him what work he has done with his Cabinet colleagues to ensure that GB Energy supports jobs in Glasgow?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank my honourable friend and congratulate him for winning his seat in Glasgow South? That's a much better question than he ever wrote for me, Mr Speaker. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, is due to make an announcement concerning the location of GB Energy very soon. I regret that in the interim I can say no more than that, although I'm sure my honourable friend's words of encouragement in respect of Glasgow will not have escaped the attention of my Cabinet colleagues. And I can announce exclusively to the House today, Mr Speaker, that GB Energy will be headquartered in Scotland.
Richard Baker.
Mr Speaker, my right honourable friend is aware I've been working closely with Unite GMB and local management at the Methil yard in my constituency during the restructuring process for Harland and Wolff. Will he agree with me that 200 skilled workers at Methil and those at Arnish have a vital contribution to make to our ambitions to grow our renewable sector, and all stakeholders a vital role in securing the long-term future of these yards?
Can I thank and congratulate my honourable friend for winning Glenrothes in mid-Fife? Mr Speaker, I acknowledge the efforts of my honourable friend and indeed many honourable members in the House and in the local area in respect of the Methil fabrication yard. The yard, along with many others like it, will have a key role in fulfilling our ambition for Scotland and the UK to become a clean energy powerhouse. In addition to GB Energy, the National Wealth Fund will help unlock further investment opportunities for ports, heavy industry and manufacturing companies that have a crucial role to play in creating jobs in our transition to net zero. I've been to the Methil plant twice myself. It's a world-class workforce, and I can assure them we'll do everything we possibly can to make sure they've got a bright future.
John Cooper.
Mr Speaker, thank you. I welcome the Secretary of State to his place and thank him for his generous words about the work of Sir Alistair Jack previously in that role. Does, however, the Right Honourable Gentleman share my consternation this morning that 2 sanctioned Russian oligarchs now have a share in Harbour Energy, our largest producer of North Sea oil and gas? This seems incredible at this time, not least since the company which they are using to have this stake read letter. We, for our part, forced them to divest themselves of a broadband company because they were a threat to national security. Can we look again at this decision?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman and welcome him to his place, and congratulations on winning his seat. Mr Speaker, the Foreign Secretary is sitting 2 seats along from me. I'm sure he would have heard what he said. I'm sure it's a concern to everyone in the House, and we'll make sure that a written response is given to the honourable gentleman as soon as possible.
Come to Shadow Secretary of State, John Law.
Mr Speaker, thank you. The Rosebank oil field is going to provide more than £6 billion of investment in UK-based businesses. The Jackdaw oil field will cater for the energy needs of 1.4 million UK households. But this Labour government are jeopardising all that investment, energy and the jobs by dropping the UK government's opposition to the judicial review which aims to block these vital energy projects. Can the Secretary of State seriously tell the 90,000 people whose jobs rely on oil and gas in Scotland that the future of this crucial industry is secure under Labour when it is his government's policy to oppose all new developments?
Can I thank the Shadow Secretary of State, and can I firstly say to him that he should stop scaremongering with the 90,000 workforce in the North Sea. Oil and gas will be with us for decades to come. The Finch decision, of course, that he refers to was something that this government had to consider very carefully. The Secretary of State, my right honourable friend, has started a consultation on consenting, which will affect Jackdaw and indeed Rosebank that he has mentioned, and that should conclude within the next 6 months.
John Lamont.
Mr Speaker, question 8.
For what number?
Number 8.
Number 8. With permission, Mr Speaker, I will take questions 8 and 13 together. We will strengthen the Migration Advisory Committee and establish a framework for joint working with skills bodies across the UK, the Industrial Strategy Council and the Department for Work and Pensions. The needs of our economy are different across the regions and nations, and different sectors have different needs. Given that skills policy and employment support are devolved, we will work with the Scottish Government when designing workforce plans for different sectors. This will ensure our migration and skills policies work for every part of the UK.
Mr Speaker, the tourism and hospitality sectors right across my Argyll, Bute and South Lochaber constituency are desperate for people to come and work. But because of Brexit and end of freedom of movement, we have the jobs but we do not have the people. The government know that Scotland needs people. So will the government now reaffirm Jackie Bailey's commitment and assurance to voters and now commit to facilitating the creation of a Scottish visa?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We are committed to ensuring that there is effective Scottish representation on the Migration Advisory Council, and I look forward to working with the Home Office and engaging with sectors on ensuring that the immigration sector works for all parts of the UK.
Kirsten Black.
The skilled worker salary threshold and the skills list is simply not working. Will the Minister make sure that the skills occupation list is actually fit for purpose for Scotland, and will she make sure that that skills shortage occupation list works in order for our energy transition to work?
Mr Speaker, it's fixing the foundations of our economy that is the key to bringing long-term prosperity. That includes future-proofing the economy for all, whether that is for long-established families or new arrivals. The Chancellor will set out plans to fix the foundations at the budget on the 30th of October.